It's time for Remodel Revolution. And now, an award-winning contractor with over 40 years experience. Here is Alex Guthrie.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Remodel Revolution Radio. Remodel Revolution podcast. I did the same thing last week. Doggone it. Welcome to another episode of Remodel Revolution, the vodcast series. I'm your host, Alex Guthrie. I'm so glad you're with us today, and I'm so glad I'm here with you, and I appreciate you watching the show and following the show and being part of the audience. We have a great show today. We've got Phil Crone, who's Executive Director at Dallas Builders Association, and we're going to be talking about a whole lot of local stuff going on in North Texas. We want to we're like blowing up at the seams around here, and there's all kinds of things that have happened at the local level as well as the state level. Phil and I are going to discuss that for a while. Also, we're going to have a builder's tip. How are you comparing your quotes? And the reason I thought about this is because, as always, I'm in the middle of I'm not going to call it a war, but it's a competition between another builder on a homeowner, with a homeowner on a project. And I am not always comfortable with the way people go about this process as it relates to remodeling, because all things are not equal. So we're going to have a discussion about that. That's our builder's tip for the day. But first, as with every show, we're going to do our builder. That'll be the first thing we do is our builder's tip. And today's builder's tip is brought to us by Total Air and Heat, my go-to heating and air conditioning company. Listen, in case you haven't noticed, summer is upon us, and your AC system is running the equivalent of a car going 60 miles an hour all day long. And just like a car, from time to time, your AC system needs the best mechanic around. Now, anybody can tell you that they work cheap, but cheap gets real expensive when the job isn't done right. Honest, well-trained, and thoroughly background checked, I never have to worry about the guys I send out to my clients' homes when I call Total Air and Heat. Family owned and operated for over 60 years, Total Air is a proud train dealer, and you know how hard it is to stop a train. So give them a call, 972-881-0020. That's 972-881-0020, or contact them at totalair.com today. Tell them I had you call. And you can tell them that I didn't have to force you to do it. You wanted to. So the question today is, how are you comparing quotes for your remodel? I made some notes last night, and I think this is very important right now, because when the economy slows down in housing and the building slows down, a lot of people turn into remodelers because they think, it's what's available. A lot of homeowners now, for whatever reason, will choose to remodel instead of buy new or build new for lots of different reasons. A lot of it has to do with the economy, and a lot of it has to do with maybe they can't get comparable pricing when they sell their house, and they'll choose to remodel. Remodeling is a very niche business. Everybody has their own way of accomplishing the same thing. You can have 3 different people bid the same project on a remodel. Let's say you're building a garage, and you will get 10 different ideas on how that can be done and what it can cost. So there's a lot of interpretation that happens that is sort of flexible. And so the best way to do that, the best way to deal with that is to have a plan. So we're going to talk a little bit about having a plan. The key to making the right decision is providing the clearest and most precise information at the very beginning. And that means providing a plan that is architecturally drawn. It doesn't have to be an architect. It can be a line drawing, just something so that everybody knows exactly what the project is, what part of the house it's going to be on, the perimeters of it, and what you expect on the inside. You don't have to have these big detailed cabinet drawings and things like that. Just show them what the basic plan is so everybody knows exactly what they're looking at and they're all looking at the same thing. It's imperative that you also include in that plan, with that plan, a finish schedule. And here's where I run into issues when I'm bidding these, particularly if there's more than one bidder. And that is when we don't really know what the finishes are, because at the end of the day, the finish out of that project is where a lot of the big bucks are. So nowadays you can go to a big box store and you can buy less expensive plumbing fixtures, lighting fixtures, floor finishes, anything you want in a house. Or you can go to a more expensive route, which will be a higher grade of fixtures. So it's imperative that you have all that laid out. The best plans that I think I look at are the ones where the architect or a designer has laid all of that out. And that includes paint colors. Everything needs to be addressed. That is the only way that you're ever going to get an apples to apples estimate for a remodel bid. Here's a few pointers, a few things I wanted to point out. One is to, as I said, make sure that you have a comprehensive set of building documents. Now, before you can pull a permit, you have to have what's called construction drawings. And that is the entire plan drawn out. It has to be laid out on a site plan so that if the city will know if you're adding on to the house, if you're not adding on to the house. They want to know how it affects the envelope of the house and how it lays out. So, and what that has to do is side yard setbacks. It has to do with fire code. There's all kinds of things that the reason that that's important. Make sure you have a comprehensive finish schedule. We covered that. Make sure your contractor has experience and is comfortable performing the type of work that you're asking them to bid. Just because he was your favorite handyman does not mean that he's going to be very good at doing an addition on your house. And a lot of people just don't get that. And they don't understand that just because you're in construction, it doesn't mean you're a great painter. Just because you're a great painter doesn't mean you're a good carpenter. And I see it all the time. I have to clean up behind them because half the time they don't know what they're doing. They're calling their cousin to work on the job, and things go south in a hurry. And it is super, super expensive to fix it. Provide adequate access to the building site and make sure you're prepared to have people in your house, this is the bidding process. Make sure that everybody has access to everything they need to do as much exploratory things as they need to do to find out where your wiring is, where your plumbing is, where's the plumbing coming to the house if you have to get into that. Let's say you're doing an addition and you have gas, water, sewer lines running underground where that addition's going to go. Are you going to have to relocate those things? There's all kinds of things that come up when you do this. So make sure that everybody has adequate access. You need to ask questions. Ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to challenge the person bidding the job. Here is a very, very important thing. I want you to ask, is the contractor, the person whose name is on the contract, have they been involved in the bidding process? It is imperative that whoever is running that project, whether it's him, her, whether it's the job foreman, whoever is running the project, ordering materials, ordering workmen, ordering scope of work, that they understand what has been quoted and why. I cannot tell you, I'll tell you, I supervise all my own projects. And the reason I do that is because I found that it was costing me a ton of money with people fixing things they had screwed up, or we were getting out of balance with our budget. And I did not know until I got the bill. And it was happening because people weren't familiar with the budget I had set or why I had set it. So a lot of times it has to do with what the homeowner wants, what my client wants. And sometimes it's, there's other reasons. So make sure that whoever is bidding the job or whoever's running the job has been involved in the budget. They understand what the budget's for. It's the little small things that add up on these things at the end. So all the things that you think are small, and you add them or you change them, and you go, well, it was only $500. Let me tell you, that stuff adds up. It adds up a lot. And just think about it in your daily life. That stuff has a big impact on your budget. If your contractor and you decide to do a cost plus project, meaning that you pay, the contractor will present you with an invoice, and you pay his cost plus a percentage. So it would typically be a 20-25%, somewhere in that range, depending on the size of the project. You should have access to all of those invoices, the original invoices. We had a guy in Dallas that got in big trouble, and he deserved to, a contractor. This is a few years ago, because he was doctoring those invoices, handing them to the clients, and screwing the clients. And unfortunately for the subcontractors, he wasn't paying some of them. He got in big trouble. He deserved to. You need to make sure that you have access to the original invoices so you know what the builder's been paid or been invoiced, because that's what he's basing his on. If you're doing a fixed cost contract, if you're doing a guaranteed price contract, it's very hard to do that in remodeling. And the reason is because there's so much gray area in the scope of the job. There's a lot of things that can happen that you don't expect. Well, let me say this. It's going to happen. If you don't, pardon me, I cut myself shaving this morning. That's why I have a little spot right there. That's my little love mole. My Marilyn Monroe. If you have a problem with a fixed cost project, I'm sorry, I distracted myself. I looked at myself in the monitor. Stop it. If you're doing a fixed cost contract, you need to make sure that if it's guaranteed, that you have a change order system in place that everybody understands, that is clear and concise. And it may mean that you need to see the receipts as well for those change orders. But the change order process has to have a time limit on it, because usually when that happens, you're right in the middle of something. You uncover something that has to be changed. You don't have time to sit there and negotiate and search for bids for a week or whatever. You have to make the change and then figure out the cost as quick as you can. So make sure you have a concise change order system in place. Okay, that's if you have fixed costs. And remember, things happen, and you can't always count on what you're going to find inside an old wall or underneath an old floor. So it's imperative that you have at least a 10 to 20% contingency emergency funds available to you in case you need them, because you probably will. So those are my tips, and sorry about all this camera stuff, guys, but this is live video. Take that and use that to help you be successful with your remodel, and you're going to be a lot happier at the end. And you can always email me, you can call me, or you can text me. And if you have any questions or you need help figuring these things out, I'm always happy to answer your calls. So today we have the privilege of having as our guest Mr. Phil Crone from the Dallas Builders Association, and he is the executive officer, director. What are you now?
6 one way, half
What do you
dozen
call
another.
it? You're the big boss.
There you go.
Right, yeah. So if you have anybody you need to yell at up there, it's that guy. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
Oh, awesome. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, and there is so much stuff going on, not only locally, but at the state level that is fascinating. So where do you want to start? We had a recent change. It's Diversity in Housing Bill HB 2439. Explain that to us. I don't quite understand all the little nuances in it.
Sure. It's going to be starting September 1st when this law and some others kick in. It's going to be a brave new world out there. There are a lot of really great things that the legislature did for housing affordability, for consumer choice, and this is probably the best example of that because you had a lot of cities out there that were having kind of picking winners and losers in terms of the products that they would allow in homes. They would allow, for example, 80% brick and stone, and that would limit or completely eliminate some of the other products, hardy LP, some of those other things that were there. And it had nothing to do with code, as you know. I mean, there's no safety difference from one to the other. It was just all aesthetics, and it was just a kind of a preference of a city council trying to tell you as a home buyer or homeowner what products you could put on your home. And
so you told me for years you thought that was a way for them to sort of regulate the cost of housing, to sort of almost regulate who could afford to live in their town.
And that was some of the really concerning things that we were hearing from some of the smaller cities, especially out there. And really, quite frankly, why I really love working for the association and advocating for some of these things that we're talking about, because some of these cities were more concerned about who was in the house than what's on the house. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about the need for these ordinances in order to eliminate tract housing or things that they didn't really find acceptable in their city. And a lot of it would kind of turn over to the schools, to the demographics, to some of the things that
to ginning up the tax base.
Yeah, well, and let's face it, a lot of things that the history of zoning is not really a good one in terms of inclusivity, and a lot of the arguments for some of these things veered in that direction. And here 50 plus years after the Fair Housing Act, we should be past these things. We should be thinking about diversity. We should be thinking about inclusion. We should be thinking about affordability, because this region depends on it. That's why
there's a couple of companies that builders buy a lot of their product from, and they were probably not really happy about this, but because now what the code says is that you can't dictate via the state. You can't dictate these options people have for really we're talking about the exterior of the house, right? Whether you use brick, whether you use siding, or who you use, or that type of thing.
Yeah, and if it's allowed in the code, then it's going to be allowed to put into your home. And
if it's allowed in the international code.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have the international code, which is like the big code that everybody in the country bases their regional or local building codes on. Mm-hmm. And so you can take that international code and it allows certain things. But the local people are changing that to fit their desires, really, for whatever reason, whether it's to affect the cost of the house or the aesthetics of the house, or run that price up so we get more, people with loftier checkbooks in here.
It was really interesting. I testified on this about 3 times down at the legislature, and on one side you had certain product people that benefited from these and said that their livelihood depended on these sorts of municipal mandates, and then on the other side you had another set of product manufacturers and installers that said, hey, our business, our jobs, our livelihood are being curtailed by these, and now we have the ability for all these products to compete in the marketplace. Homeowners are going to have choices. It's their home. It should be their decision after all, and now they get to make that decision instead of having a council or some other government entity telling them what's what.
Okay, so here's the question. How or can entities code around this? Can they change their local code and just kind of blow this thing out?
The law is really well written in terms of saying that both a regulation, a mandate, any type of edict that comes from the government, whether it's direct or indirect, if you make things more difficult for one product or over another, those aren't allowed. But you can still, as a developer, put in your covenants for an HOA. You could still have a development agreement between the city and a landowner, a developer, home builder. A lot of these things, these arm's length transactions are still allowed, as are some protections that I think by and large need to be in place for legitimate historic districts and things that kind of have a character and have been designated as such.
Well, like historic districts, I don't think you can change that, but the HOAs, I guess now everybody's going to be living in an HOA if they want to control something like that. Well, that's very interesting. And how's the builder community that you deal? Now, Phil deals with basically all the builders in Dallas, and particularly new home builders. How are they handling this, or what are their thoughts?
They're excited. I think there's a little trepidation trying to figure out, are cities going to find a loophole? There aren't any. That doesn't prevent people from trying. I know there are cities out there that are trying, but they're excited. It's going to be, like I said, a brave new world starting September 1st. And I think, and I've encouraged them, we have about 400 builders in our association. I've encouraged them to give us some really good examples of things, of homes that were banned before but are now being allowed in some of these cities, and hopefully some testimonials from
So you're
happy
not going to
homeowners.
go in a city now and see every home with ugly red brick. Darn.
You know,
now,
I got a story on this because, consumers wonder, and especially people moving from other places, the brick and stone thing is not necessarily what you see in other parts of the country. And you'll see a lot of these neighborhoods, kind of the homes will more or less look the same. And some of that's kind of zoning driven. Well, after a few years, a city will say, well, gosh, all these homes look the same. We need an anti-monotony ordinance, and we kind of
anti-monotony.
Yeah, so we kind of put our head in our hands and say, well, y'all have sort of regulated the monotony, and
That sounds like a marriage thing to me.
yeah, it's
like you need to
it's a
spice
virtuous
up.
circle.
You need to spice up your life.
Well, it's in the food world. My wife's the same way. She would, I'd eat the same thing if it was left to me, but she takes the monotony out of my diet, and now
one
the
of the
state's taking the
complaints-
monotony out of the city.
One of the complaints that I've had, and many of other people have had for many years, is how all these towns have developed around here in the last 30 years. They all look the same. I mean, you drive through them, they make you use the same color everywhere. The shopping centers, the houses. It's boring. There's no creativity involved in it.
Yeah, it's hard to compete
Driving
that way
me
too,
nuts.
and that's what I'm excited about. Is we're going to see some really good innovation. We're going to see some really neat homes. There are examples, and there are only about 200 cities in Texas that had these sort of regulations ahead of time. 1,000 cities that didn't. So all these horror stories that I'm hearing that they're going to be corrugated metal houses and sod roofs and all these things that we haven't seen for 100 years. There's no proof of that. I think there's just going to be a lot of really good examples not as much monotony.
But so what? So if you buy a house in a neighborhood that's 65 years old, let's say you're going into an older neighborhood, you're wanting to be in that neighborhood. I mean, you want your house to fit in that neighborhood. It's not logical to me that people are going to go in and do crazy things. Mm-hmm. We're already doing crazy things. I mean, we've changed I shouldn't say crazy. I don't really mean crazy, but
Innovative.
We've changed. Yeah, innovative. Yeah. So we've changed from a traditional type architecture to more of a modern type architecture. They look way different, They look way different than in the neighborhoods they're in than the original houses.
My street's a great example of that. If you drive down my street, we're the probably one brick and stone house of the 5 that's been built in the last couple of years. We're the least expensive compared to some of those modern ones that you were talking about. And then the rest are old, basically Sears and Roebuck homes that were built back in the 50s, 60s, and even before.
Yeah.
And I like that diversity. It's a diversity in the people that live there too. It's great.
There's lots of neighborhoods all over the country where you go in and every house looks a little different, you know. There's nothing wrong with that. And so somehow we got into this kind of monotonous architecture where you go through these neighborhoods and they're all the same. And you're like, please do something different, you know, change something up. Oh, well, we've got 3 different floor plans. So what? You know, anyway,
I'll give you another,
I'm happy about this.
Yeah, I'm happy about it. I'll give you another example. It's not really going to be affected by this bill, but we had a city nearby where one of the council members was upset because he could not fit his Ford F-250 truck into his garage. I guess didn't measure, or maybe the truck got bigger or something. But the city was really considering a garage size requirement that would ensure that every home built in that town could fit an F-250 truck in the garage.
That
And the
only
builder
in
said-
Texas,
and the
baby.
builder said-
Only in Texas. Are
Yeah.
you sure? Well, I think they ought to make it an F-350.
Yeah,
Dually.
make sure you have the horns on the front and the garage can still
That's right.
close.
If you can't fit them longhorns through that garage, it's too small, boy.
So this is some of the fun stuff we get to deal with at the Dallas Builders Association.
Yeah, well, that's pretty amazing. So the city of Dallas, really North Texas, has gone absolutely crazy in the last really probably 10 years, but for the last 3 or 4 years, it's been insane. The pace that things are getting done, the changes, every square inch of dirt in this town is being churned up for something, sidewalks or buildings or houses. How many permits were pulled just in the city of Dallas last year for new houses?
I think they pulled
2,000.
They pulled about 2,000 last year.
2,000.
Single family. Mm-hmm.
Gosh, that's amazing. Now, when you're in the middle of Dallas, a big city like Dallas that's already pretty well built out, that's a lot of little independent fill-in type buildings. So that's putting a lot of people to work. It's not like a big production builder is coming in and pulling half those permits. I don't know the percentage, but it seems to me that that's a whole lot of change going on inside a big city like this. But then when you add in the surrounding areas, and every time we add a loop, a new highway, we open up another giant area for people to fill in with houses, and they're doing it, and we're okay with that. We have a new lake being built right now. They're building a new lake to keep up with our water supply. Pretty soon we'll just ski to work, and you know.
They need a lot more rain before that happens.
Yeah, right. But the whole, it's almost like a renaissance that's going on in North Texas right now. It's an amazing thing to be a part of and to watch. So tell us some of the new things that you guys are dealing with. One of the things that has been your focus recently are the way that the city is not keeping up technically to help the processing part of building a house be easy. I mean, it's really hard to go down and get a permit.
Yeah, you had mentioned 2,000 homes being built in the city of Dallas, but a lot of those are being built in the north, and they're being built at prices that really aren't going to make a difference in terms of the supply of homes and price points where working families can afford it. There's such a shortage in that $250 to $350 price point, and I think that while well-meaning and a lot of focus has been on the southern part of our city, we really, really need to get our act together and get large-scale single-family residential development in parts of the city that have been asking for it for a long time, that need it, and make sure that those opportunities are in price points that provide development without displacement of the residents in those
And how
areas.
does the city, how is that affected by anything they're doing downtown?
Well, and that's kind of the transition here. That's inextricably linked to how efficient and how effective the processes are that pertain to development, and they're anything but that right now in Dallas. The development process, you have no idea how long it's going to take, you have no idea how much it's going to cost, and that's usually not a good way to try to get financing, and it's definitely not a good way with $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 surprises that you can't predict.
Particularly if you're going into an existing area that's already got underground utilities, and maybe you're we have builders at the Dallas Builders Association, people we know that'll go in and they'll knock down 3 or 4 houses, or they'll take an old street and turn it into a new street, basically. And that's an expensive, kind of scary thing where you're kind of digging up stuff that's been down there for who knows how long.
Yeah, and a lot of, and certainly in Dallas, old infrastructure, and the issue that comes from that is sometimes you'll encounter those surprises, but if you know what to expect going in, there are a lot of cities that have tough standards, but they're enforced fairly efficiently and effectively, and everybody knows what they're up against, and you can pencil out the project, and you know what it's going to cost, and you know that it's going to fit into that neighborhood. Like I said, it's the predictability more so than anything, that the unknown that the builders and developers, they can't have. We've been lucky here recently with interest rates being as low as they are, cost of money being as cheap as it's ever been, but that's not going to be the case long term, which is why we need to address these issues as soon as we can, especially in Dallas, because there's just, like I said, such a great opportunity, not necessarily just in the infill projects that you were mentioning, Alex, but also the raw land that's out there. Another problem, though, is that they've got a tree ordinance that in some cases has cost developers more than $250,000 just to remove the hackberry trees. And
wow.
I live in East Dallas, and we saw a lot of hackberry trees in that June storm.
Nothing a good tornado won't fix.
The June storm ate a few of those, but they get planted by the birds, and they're not the best.
We have more cheap firewood now than we've had.
And it was laying around for about 6 weeks before they picked it up.
Well, part of what cities struggle with now is automation. And so they're trying to protect. Now, let's take a little town like Heath. Heath is on the east side of Dallas County. I'm not sure what county is it called? Rockwall County. Yep. Thank you. And so Heath was just this cute little farming community, beautiful, beautiful place. And it had has still lots of little, almost like little ranches kind of scattered around it with beautiful homes on them, like little horse farms and stuff. And all of a sudden, boy, that place took off. I mean, it is growing so fast that the city could not keep up with it. And so there's been a lot of growth pains and so they're trying to automate, and they're trying to get a system together that makes it easy to get a permit, to comply with whatever codes they have for maybe where you're tying into the sewer system or tying into the water system, all those kind of things. And at the same time, there's this huge growth spurt going on where they're building roads everywhere. They're widening all the roads or building new schools. I mean, it's something to watch what's happened out there, and is happening still. And so when you take a big town like Dallas or Plano, any of these bigger towns, Frisco's a great example of this too. Mm-hmm. You have to they have to keep up technically with an automated way to operate. And there's a system they've all been trying to adapt. I don't know how far they are because I don't work in all of them, but they're all trying to integrate everything where a builder can go to a single site and just say what city he's in and get all that done. But that's hard.
It is.
I mean, it's hard to implement.
Just anything technology-wise takes a lot longer and is extremely expensive, and that's especially the case in cities like Dallas with a lot of people that work there. It's necessary to trend in that direction because just like the rest of the construction industry, is missing 20,000 workers. The cities are understaffed as well. Mm-hmm. They've got a lot of expectations that are being placed on them to fulfill their civic duties, and there just aren't enough folks there, and some of the more experienced ones are eyeing retirement or are already there.
Yeah.
And it's an evolutionary process we've tried to work with cities.
And these young guys like you don't know how to go in and write something on a piece of paper. That's like foreign to you. Do you even keep a pen?
No, because I can't read my own handwriting, so that's why I use the iPad.
If it didn't printed, I can't read it. Well, yeah. That's kind of how mine is too. Okay, so last week, you had the Sunbelt Builders Show here in town. How'd that go?
It was a lot of fun. It was
obviously I didn't go.
Well, you missed a lot of fun, Alex, because they had They had Vanilla Ice is the
Was that the
master
drink? Was that the
ceremonies.
drink of the day?
Yeah, that's Vanilla Coke, I think.
Oh,
But
oh.
Vanilla Ice was a one-hit
A
wonder.
white wrapper.
Yeah,
Let's
that-
just say it.
yeah,
Let's
that-
get it out there right now.
Yeah, that probably
From North Dallas.
The inspiration for Eminem and all the others that came after. But Vanilla Ice had one hit, Ice Ice Baby. I tried to rap it on one of my
Ice
videos.
Ice
It was-
Baby. Gosh, I forgot all.
not good.
How could I forget that?
But he's gotten into the housing industry,
Yeah.
and he kind of brought down the house. There were a lot of like awkward white people dancing after the after the speech was done up there, but he really got people jazzed up, and it was a really good time getting out there on the show floor and a good energy.
The problem with dancing to Vanilla Ice is that you almost have to be like around 50, right?
I remember it.
Well, you
I was-
remembered. I remember, reading about the Civil War, but I
Yeah.
wasn't there.
But I was early 90s. I was 7 or 8. I don't know if you were. You're not that old. So.
No, I'm not that old.
Yeah.
Well, Vanilla Ice. Well, that's cool. What kind of attendance did you all have? And now, first of all, tell us what the Sunbelt Builder Show is.
Sure, I'm not sure the exact numbers. We'll probably have a post-mortem on that
Just
pretty
make
soon.
one
but
up.
a lot. That's
Okay, that's
my
good.
scientific analysis. The Sunbelt Builder Show is a show that's put on by the Texas Association of Builders every year. They have it. This year is at the Gaylord Texan over in Grapevine. They've had it at the Hilton Anatole. It's usually in the DFW area. It draws a lot of people from around the state and around the region, and has a great energy in terms of the exhibitors that come there, some of the education that takes place. It's really Texas-centric, and it's great to catch up with a lot of people that we get to see from other markets and invite them here to Dallas. And of course, a lot of our members make it with mud on their boots off the job site to check out all the exhibits. And our state association did a bang-up job hosting this thing, and I think they struck gold with the Vanilla Ice thing.
Well, it has changed so much because now this is, how long have they been doing this now? 10 years? Longer?
Oh, it's been going on much longer than that.
Much
I
longer
think
than that.
20
I
plus,
remember the
yeah.
first one, but I don't remember when it was.
And you are old then.
I am. I'm not old. I have a good memory.
Your wife may beg to differ.
Yeah.
I know
yeah.
mine does.
She just says I act old. I don't know why.
I just say I'm growing older, but not up.
Yeah, okay. You're not older, Phil. You've gotten younger. Now, I've known, just to clarify, I've known Phil since he was a nice young boy. And,
Not nice or young.
and then he
anymore.
got married, and now he's kind of a curmudgeon.
Exactly.
Sort of. He's the executive director. You have to be a curmudgeon. You can't be like a young guy anymore.
Yeah, just kind of sit there.
Because you're having to deal with a bunch of old curmudgeons.
and some young ones too.
You have
but-
some young curmudgeons
Yeah.
in there?
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's a good group. It's a kind of a work hard, play hard type of group, and that's why you fit in pretty well in it.
So what's coming up with the Dallas BA?
Well, you saw some pictures of it a little bit earlier on the screen. The Dallas Builder Show is something that we're really excited about and kind of piggybacking off of.
So Dallas Builder
Sunbelt.
Show is different from Sunbelt.
Yep.
Okay. Tell us about the Dallas Builder Show. Where is it and when is it?
Sure,
And is it for public
it's
consumption?
it's for the industry's consumption. We do have a few builders that'll bring their clients there every so often. We don't do a home show is kind of more the public consumption thing where you have the ShamWow guy and everything else. Ours is
My
more
favorite guy. I've got four of those.
yeah. See,
4 or
and
5
there's
of
a
those.
industry trade show that we do November 12th, Plano Center, Spring Creek, and 75. One of the key audiences, though, that we do invite are a lot of the high school construction trade vocational students and programs, and that's such a great group because that's our future. Those are the young men and women that we need in the industry, and we want to really embrace the opportunity to get them to meet some of the people and some of the products that they're going to be working with.
Now, the DISD was starting or is in the middle of trying to, and has introduced a trades program with the local colleges, the small colleges. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, they've got a lot of different, they call them P-Tech or basically magnet type of programs that some are geared towards construction. We work with the one, as far as DISD goes, first and foremost at Skyline High School, and they've been a great partner. Doug Palmer's the instructor there, and we've taken them to a lot of different sites, and they've really enjoyed getting into the home and looking at the blueprints and walking through some of these things. And they're going to be at the show as well.
Well, one of the things that has happened or kind of popped up recently, it's just getting a lot of energy in the last 2 or 3 years. And I think it's just because of supply and demand. We've had a lot of challenges with labor shortages. Our builders have. How is that affecting builders' time on the job?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, as I mentioned before, missing about 20,000 construction workers between commercial and residential, and the net result of that, on average, is just by not having enough people to get the job done, it adds about $5,000 in about 2 months to every home that's being built in the area.
I talked to somebody, I interviewed somebody, and what he was telling me, and he is a vendor, or he's a subcontractor. I don't remember what they do, but he said that instead of having 4 people on a job, he can only have 2. And a lot of it, and it's not that anybody's greedy or anybody's trying to do more than they can, it's that there's a massive demand, a huge demand for people to get out there and get jobs done, and you have to try and get as many as you can. You're spreading yourself really thin, and we can't find trained tradespeople now, where we used to be able to just train them. I mean, I grew up just learning my trade craft. Everybody's specialized now. You don't have people that, for all intents and purposes, you don't have people that can go out and just sort of understand everything that's going on and how to deal with a particular situation. You have people that are trained to do a specific job. It's almost like a factory job now, the mentality of it. And so it's really difficult to fill those positions as a builder. And not just the builder. We're not talking about just the builder. We're talking about the AC guy and the plumber and the electrician. There's just simply not enough tradespeople. But the good news is that there is a huge national push to change that, to turn that around. We went through a period where we told all of our kids you had to go to college and you had to become a computer programmer, or you were going to starve to death in the street. That's not true. You can make a real good living being a plumber or electrician or welder. Welders are huge demand.
Well, you'll go out to the job site, and if they're not driving the generic white van that they usually do to the site, you'll see maybe on a Friday the crappiest car that's there is usually the builder's car, and the painters are driving Lincoln Navigators,
right,
and the framers have an F-350. May not fit in the garage, but still, it's really refreshing to see a renewed focus on construction trades and on the things that really made America great, not to use that cliche, but just our ability to make things. We've lost track of that over the last few years.
Hey, it's what built our country, and it's the small business people and the people that are passionate about what they do with their business, or whatever the trade is. That's what actually built this country and keeps this country going. And so we're huge advocates of small business around here. Of course, I'm still in small business. I'm still working really hard every day to remodel houses and do things like that. And while I'm at that, I want to talk about a good friend of mine. He's going to be on with us next week, Randy Hargrave with Hargrave Foundation Repair. Hargrave Foundation Repair has been in business for just around 50 years, maybe a little longer than 50 years. And I'll tell you, if you're thinking that you might have to call a foundation repair company, then it's probably time to go ahead and make that call. And that's kind of like thinking maybe I have a cavity, my tooth is hurting, I really don't want to call the dentist, but you do it anyway because you know you need to. Don't be duped by phony foundation repair companies that are just out to make a quick buck that you're going to have back over and over again because they don't know what they're doing. Hargrave Foundation Repair has been in business for 50 years, and Randy Hargrave's dad started that business, and they've never looked back. Hargrave Foundation Repair exclusively uses the Chance helical pier system, and I'm going to tell you, I'm a huge believer in this system. I don't do any foundations or any home repairs without consulting Randy Hargrave, because they really know what they're doing. It's not nearly as messy, it's a lot more flexible, and it's a lot more cost efficient. So give them a call, 972-442-3415, 972-442-3415, or contact them at hargravefoundation.com. So I needed to get that in there, Mr. Crone. Well, I was thinking about small family-owned businesses, and I was actually talking to my executive producer, Ziggy Becker, a little while ago, and we're talking about how all of our sponsors are family-owned businesses. I don't know if I just gravitate to them or they gravitate to me. I'm not sure why, but that is really what makes our country what it is. That's what makes us all successful.
Yeah, it's the fabric of our country. It's the fabric of our construction industry, and it's the essence, the focus of the people that we have and that we need more of to continue in this industry. And that's why we drive our passion towards some of these construction trades programs, because we need more, and eventually all of us are going to retire, and we want to make sure that our legacy is that we left our industry a little bit better for
We're
who comes
retiring?
next.
Who's retiring?
Well,
Are you going to
I
retire?
will eventually. But
No, you're not. Let me tell you something.
30 years maybe.
Retirement is not what people say it is. It's boring. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know, because I'll never retire because I can't. They haven't. Talk about a living wage. Let's talk about living wage. No.
I think you get plenty of fishing done from what I see on Facebook.
Hey, I
but-
sneak out. I do a little bit of fishing. I kind of like that. I
but,
kind of like that.
On that small business thing, though, I also think it's the great equalizer, the digital world that we have. And you and I were talking before the show. I wanted to congratulate you on a successful move to the new format.
Hey,
The fact
thank you.
that
Appreciate that.
You have a lot more flexibility. You've taken to it pretty well. You provide your own ambient light.
I do.
up
I
here.
bring my own.
And
I shine.
And it's a great way for sponsors and some of these family-owned businesses to get involved. And
I
I'm
appreciate
really proud
that.
of you, man. You've done a great job.
Yeah, I
here.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. And if you will go on to the DallasBuilder.com website and like it, or maybe you do go to Dallas Builder on Facebook.
Yeah, go to Dallas Builders Association on Facebook. If you're a consumer, go to DallasBuilders.com. If you're in the industry, go to DallasBuilders.com.
And you'll get to see Phil's 5.
This afternoon, in fact.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's Wednesday, every Wednesday in the afternoon,
Well,
whenever I get around to it.
Phil's
I
a
do
rock.
video.
He's a star. He's a rock star. But we've always known that. You have done a fantastic job. While we're congratulating each other, I want to say this. Now, after the recession of 2008, the building industry got shredded. I mean, people going out of business, people losing their businesses. As we all know, we all had to deal with it in our country. And in particular, the building associations took a heck of a beating, because a lot of people just simply, if you have to choose between your membership dues and making that car payment, who's gonna get a more important decision there. So Phil inherited sort of a mess, and he has turned it around to a really, really viable, kind of moved it out of the Stone Ages into the new modern era. With all of your you've gotten really engaged on social media, which is, as you and I were talking earlier, that's an absolute necessity. And you've changed your staff, most of your staff, and you've brought in younger people with a lot of energy, and you've been a great leader for them, for that association. Congratulations. And you got recently an award,
I did.
a national award,
Yep.
for being.
Well, I got the Executive Officer of the Year award, but our association got the Membership Cup and
can catch
Best
Remodel Web-
Website. And I'm glad you mentioned the staff, because it's our team. It's David, Sheena, Misty, Becky, Barcy, Holly. we have a great crew here. Some
Yeah.
have been at the association for several decades, some just for a handful of years. They're the ones that are making it happen, and I'm just really blessed to work with them every day.
Yeah, no, it's always a challenge. I mean, that association got gutted pretty bad, and you have brought it back from the brink, literally, and your membership is up considerably. And you had your first parade of homes that you've had in 10 years this year, right?
Yep, actually the second parade of homes since we redid it.
The first was last year. That's
Yep,
right. That's
but
right. I
New
forgot.
format, new approach, and just all the digital stuff we were talking about has enabled us.
Well,
to
I
do
want
it.
to really thank you for being here today. It's been really a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. A lot of great information.
My pleasure.
Thanks to Phil Crone for being here with us today. And thanks to Mr. Ziggy Becker, our amazing producer, engineer, and mother hen when he needs to be. And he gets to put up with me. And thanks to all of our sponsors. Thank you so much for supporting the show. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. And of course, mostly thanks to our audience. We'll be back next week with another episode of Remodel Revolution, the vodcast series. Until then, this is Alex Guthrie signing off. Have a great day.
You can catch Remodel Revolution anytime. Follow the show on the website, remodelrevolutionradio.com, or on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, using the handle @Remodel Revolution Radio. You can always listen to the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn, and watch the show anytime on YouTube.